Marie. We're expecting our first child, Lily Marie, coming here in July. So currently I work law enforcement under community supervision, probation and parole. I've been a parole officer with the State Department of Correction for 6 years now. I went to UT Chattanooga. Okay, I had a studied criminal justice undergrad and graduated there 2015. Last December, finished my master's degree in public safety. A couple other things, some of the training I've had, went through crisis intervention team training, got the certification there through the sheriff's office in Hamilton County. And a little fun fact, which could also probably tie into the training. I'm a football official with the Southeastern Tennessee Football Officials Association. So that'd be our TSSAA here in the state, and then a college football official as well for the NCAA. Okay, Joe should be ready for the next one. So we see a couple images here of what is conflict. Like I've got a couple of my things up here from work. You know, we have the law enforcement picture. We've got lovely Florida Gators coach there having a friendly conversation with a football official, as we can see. You know, reality is that we're all going to face some sort of conflict, and you see that in the various pictures there. Okay, Joe. All right, so we know that conflict we saw in the pictures. We see in this one here too, kind of the table split in two. We have a little disagreement. And so a serious disagreement or argument, typically a protracted one. Okay, Joe. And resolution. Okay, we see our solved stamp over there. If only it was always that easy, right? We have a problem, we can stamp it with solved, right? So the action of solving the problem, dispute, or the matter, that disagreement we had before. And then we'll see when we put them together on the next slide, conflict resolution. Hey, that's what we're talking about, right? So process for two or more parties to find a peaceful solution to the disagreement among them, okay? Disagreements, you got all types, right? Personal, financial, political, emotional. When the dispute arises, often the best course of action is negotiation to resolve the disagreement. So we have that dispute, we want to resolve it. You know, where can we meet in the middle to we both win? You know, we hear that win-win situation. What's the best outcome for everybody involved? Okay, Joe. So some of the conflict scenarios maybe you've seen. You know, you've got yourself maybe with a parent. There's a dispute there on, you know, driving, a curfew, things like that. You versus your sibling. Okay. Maybe you have to babysit. You're getting annoyed with them. You're trying to do your homework, right? You versus a friend. You and an authority figure. So your teachers, for older people, maybe our boss at work, or people that, you know, we work for, our clients, right? So different scenarios. Okie dokie. Got a pop quiz here. So who can tell me, I don't know if we need to unmute or whatever, Joe, but if anyone wants to answer it, what is the most important part to communicating effectively with the goal of de-escalating the conflict?
Do you mind if I say an answer?
I do not at all. Please do.
So like making sure you hear both sides of the argument and not just like sticking to your own side, but like hearing and trying to understand the other person's side of it.
Okay, it's a good answer. I think if you hit space or whatever, it should pop up. Tia, my wife helped me with the graphics here, so if you hit it, it should pop up the answer. So, and yes, you touched on it. So listening. Okay, listening is the greatest part of communication, which will foster an environment where the sender and receiver can acknowledge the fact they are being acknowledged. Okay, a lot of times with my training in law enforcement, there's the summary. You're listening, you're repeating what, someone's upset. You say, I understand you're upset. I hear that you're having a bad day, and you're summarizing what they're telling you and listening to what they're saying, and then going from there to the next step. So good answer. Very good. And okay, so some actions that we can use to diffuse the conflicts. We know that diffusing, that listening, is that first kind of step, right, in the conflict resolution. So one thing you don't want to do, don't talk while someone is talking. That is arguing. If only, real life, we were all on Zoom and we could just mute somebody whenever we wanted to, right? It unfortunately doesn't work like that. But so don't talk while someone is talking. That is arguing. Two people are talking, it's arguing. You don't want that. It goes back to our pop quiz, our previous slide, listening. Okay. Anytime that two people are talking or yelling, they're arguing, as we saw in the first point. So neither is listening, right? Actually, actively listen with nonverbal cues. So those cues, you got your hands down. You're not in a closed off position. Your hands in a fist, your arms crossed, anything like that. Hands down. In law enforcement, we use the open hands technique, so we're still able to respond accordingly. So a lot of people that know me know that I talk with my hands. So y'all have probably seen that already tonight. And your ear turned in, showing you that you're listening, that you care about what they're saying, and especially that eye-to-eye contact. So, and then that goes, I think y'all have had several of the sessions and classes, some about jobs and things like that, but that eye-to-eye contact with interviews and discussions as well. Okay, Joe. So how to diffuse the conflict, shall it arise? We'll see this throughout the whole thing. We've seen this: listen first, think second, and talk third. So we say that to say pause and think before saying anything to the other party. A very popular saying we use in officiating football, you've got an angry coach, you've got an angry player, maybe they've said a few choice words that you don't care with. You always hear, turn the other cheek, be the bigger man, be the bigger person. And we always say silence cannot be repeated. Say if we're upset with something they say and we spout off something, very easily that could be reported up. It can make the situation worse versus you just let them essentially have that moment, let them rant. Silence cannot be repeated. You're going to avoid a lot of other conflict. So some of the other things I thought about talking with my wife about this earlier. We hear the story or the analogy, you got a tube of toothpaste and you squeeze it all out, right? Really can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, right? So essentially, once something's said, it's out there, right? You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, right? And all that can tie into our diffusing here. Okay, ready, Joe? Okay, so a little bit more on the law enforcement side of things. There's I'll say a tactful approach we use, which is called verbal judo. And I know it sounds like a Karate Kid movie or something like that, which essentially, I guess you could argue it is, right? But verbal judo. It was, I guess, founded by Dr. George Thompson, and is the general art of persuasion. So we definitely would use this in our conflict resolution, right? You're the general art of persuasion. You're using your words in a tactful manner, right? Using words as weapons. Proficient user can cut down a rival without a physical attack. Okay, remember this is, like I said, the law enforcement side of it, and I think it's the next slide, Joe. That it ties into with law enforcement our use of force. Okay, so that verbal judo and that communication is actually on our use of force continuum, which we see here, the 6 different levels. So even by, let's say, an officer, police officer, or someone in my field, we show up to a scene, we show up to a call, something like that. We're already at the first level with officer presence. Right now, you see I'm in a t-shirt and a hoodie, but I changed out of my uniform. So, but we're wearing our uniform. We've got our equipment. You pull up in a marked car, things like that. The eyes are on you. That's that first step, right? A very important step. Another very important one you see is level 2 is that tactful communication. That's that verbal judo. So the words, the way you're talking to people, the way you respond, that's going to determine essentially a good chunk of how the rest of that goes. And then you see the other levels, which would go into hands and our different equipment on our tool belt, things like that. Okay, but striving just to show that that is an important part, and you can see how the communication can control the rest of it. Okay, Joe, we're ready. Okay, so verbal judo key points. Okay, some important things to remember. Common sense is not common, right? My wife was proofreading my slides here, and she started laughing. I asked her what she was laughing at. This is totally a side story, though. I digress. And she started laughing. My mom went down to Florida, and my dad has a place down in Florida, and she went down there to stay, and she was down there before we got there, and they have one of the electronic keypads on the door. So she texted me, was trying to get in the door, and I said, okay, here's the code. She said, well, I'm putting in the code. I said, oh, okay, well, you got to put in the code and hit the enter button. She goes, oh, okay, well, I put in the code and I hit the enter button. I said, okay, well, you got to put in the code, hit the enter button, and then you got to turn the unlock, turn the knob. So that's all my wife could think about was my lack of common sense there. Why didn't I give just all 3 steps first, right? So common sense is not common, okay? We all have a bad day. Something may slip our mind, like giving the full instructions to your mom there. So back to verbal judo. I digress. So when words are thrown at you, don't return them, deflect them. Okay. So like I said, that person's having a bad day. You're the person they see. Like I said, this is a sibling. This could be a parent, a teacher, friend, whatever. They're having a bad day and you're the person they see. That's who they're going to throw the bad words at. Okay. Or target you. Right. And essentially deflect them. You're going to let roll off your shoulder. You're not going to stoop to their level. Keep going and try to resolve that conflict when things cool off later, right? So we touched on that. Remain calm on the inside and perform on the outside. So that's having that cool composure, professional approach, things like that. Let's see, professionalism. We treat people like ladies and gentlemen, not because they are always, right? They may be off that day, but because we are. Okay, we strive to be that all the time. Another good quote is, give respect to get respect, right? You treat others with respect, you'll return that in return there. When upset, people rarely say what they mean. Okay, if you have a bad day, right, or we're having that conflict, you may stoop down to whatever lowest level you could possibly think, right? Do you really mean it? Probably not. And that's why we keep that cool composure and tie into all of our training and our points here tonight, right? Okie dokie, Joe. Okay, deflectors. Woohoo. The following mannerisms are keys to promoting hostility and invite conflict. Okay, so these are the things you do not want, right? Do not want. Okay, the wrong facial expressions. Okay, I see some people giggling over there. So maybe we know somebody that has that face, right? If they're not talking or whatever, they've just got that approach. I think I'm like that too. You see the shaved head and the clean shaven, it gives that approach sometimes, right? But we like to smile every once in a while. So wrong facial expressions. Also, you hear, I know there's some people I work with, we say that their face is talking, so another one tied into that, bad attitudes, your mannerisms, crowding, the parental finger, maybe touching. If there's a heated argument or there's a disagreement, the last thing you want to do is have a physical, touch or something like that, because then that's going to escalate. You touched me, you hit me, you assaulted me, things like that. Obviously, our profanities, derogatory words and insults, the verbal parting shot. Who in here likes to get the last word in? Anybody? Yeah. Okay. So that verbal parting shot. Okay. Next, Joe. Okay. So 4 of our steps to resolve conflict. Okay. Just remember care. Resolving conflict, care. You care about that person, so you want to resolve conflict, right? Care. Communicate. Okay. Actively listen. Review your options and end with a win-win solution. We've touched on a lot of that already so far, right? So remember, care. Next, Joe. Communicate. We're going to break apart the care here. So the C, communicate. The open communication is key in a dispute. Expressing how you feel about the situation, sticking to the facts will let the other person know you're genuine in your actions. Focusing on the problem at hand and not what the other person did will avoid unnecessary conflict. Next. And we've got our A, actively listen. Listen to what the other person has to say without interrupting. Right? Try to be objective. Then ask open-ended questions to make sure each side understands what the other person thinks, how he or she feels. So those open-ended questions, it's essentially not a yes or a no. You're giving them options to talk more and to elaborate and give a longer response. Our R is review options. So we talk over the options, looking for solutions that benefit everyone. We talked about that, the win-win, looking at the big picture things. Do not feel pressured to produce one answer immediately. Bring in objective third party for ideas if necessary. A lot of times, you have a mediator. Maybe there's a dispute with conflict between you and a sibling, and mom or dad comes in as the mediator, right? They're that third party, right? Okay, Joe. And our E, last one here, and with a win-win solution, right? This is the goal, to agree on an option that benefits both sides to some extent. When one party wins by aggressive behavior or one party simply gives in, someone's losing, right? And that means you get outcomes that do not resolve the underlying causes of the conflict. We had a new district director come in a few years ago for our district office. Our district office is in Chattanooga, but the district I work in, we go all the way up to, if anyone knows where Madisonville, Tennessee is, and we go all the way down to McMinnville, Tennessee. So we have one of the largest districts in the state. A few years ago, we had our new district director come in. He was meeting with everybody, kind of introducing himself, what he was about, his management philosophies and things like that. And one of the main things he said was everybody needs to give a pound of flesh is what he said. Everybody gives a pound, and then let's see here. I'm trying to remember. Everybody gives a pound. This person's not going to give 6 pounds, and this person's going to give an ounce. We're all together. We're all a team. We're all going to work together on that. So it's where you see in the win-win solution here. Everyone's winning. Everybody's kind of maybe making a sacrifice or giving something in return, so everybody can win. All right. Okie dokie, Joe. All right. Remember, we are born with 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? So listen, think, respond, right? 2 ears, 1 mouth, 2 ears to listen, slow in our responses, think about it, and communicate from there, right? All right, Joe. Oh boy. So I think that was it of me yapping up here. Open it up for any questions and things like that. I'll see what I can answer the best I can, right? I may have to use Joe, Mr. Pricer, if need be.
All right, don't be shy. It's not every day you get a person of law enforcement in the probation world that ask you that you have questions. So like, ask questions. See if you can resolve the conflict that you have in your head right now.
There you go.
All right. It's not very interactive without questions. Cameron, what's one of the most recent things that you've had to de-escalate in a, PG form?
Does it have to be PG?
Well, I know you're in the probation world, so I have to really keep it more on the teen level. But, in some of your work stuff, you have to de-escalate a lot of things. Obviously, probationary stuff, you're dealing with people that have already generally messed up and are out. So you're resolving some of those conflicts that they have on a weekly, daily basis through the process. So maybe go through one of those or something like that on something that you've had to do here recently.
Right. One I'm thinking of actually happened today, and it wasn't even with a clientele. It was with a fellow officer, which this happens as well. So the position that I started at the beginning of the year it's called public safety coordinator. So I oversee all the disciplinary actions for the people we supervise, so people on probation and parole for the district. So a lot of the stuff I'm doing is going back and reviewing the officers' work, audits, things like that, to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they're making sure the offender's doing what they're supposed to be doing. So one of the things I was working on today, which I'm using some work jargon, but what we call a zero tolerance violation, meaning essentially someone's going to have to go to jail, right? They've done something really bad, they have to go to jail. So I'm following up with the officer's work, make sure they've done what they need to do. So this particular officer was a trainer. She's a trainer, and she had put in a typo in one of her notes in our system. So what we call contact notes. You put something in the system and it generates it in the system. And she had missed one thing by one letter. And so I wrote it on a Post-it note, the person and what had happened. I went around the corner and she saw me, and that person's stuff had actually gone through court today. So before I even, said hello, good morning, or anything like that, it was some choice words like, I just found out about this case. You need to give me some time and relax and calm down. You're coming over here. It's like, well, I'm glad you're working on it. That stop, listen, react. I thought of 100 things I wanted to say, right? But that stop, think, react, 2 ears, 1 mouth, right? It's like, well, I hear you. I understand that you just understood all this. I was letting you know that this code, this information was the wrong code, and essentially something she could have gotten in trouble with. So she was a little annoyed seeing me come by because she knows I was reviewing her work and auditing her work, which is, part of the job. But trying to help her out in her position, which would essentially start hopefully a chain reaction of moving things in the right way, but letting her know, hey, I'm not here to, cause any problems. I'm just letting you know that to help you out, this was put in wrong. And then, of course, they look at you and go, well, thank you for, coming over here. And so she actually had her trainee with her, and she walked him through that, the rest of that. So that was funny. That's what I was thinking about on the way home. It's like, I actually had some conflict today that I had to use conflict resolution, right? So that's what I'm thinking of, like I said, from today, it's top of my head.
Yep. Good.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna ask, just for us to know, how many times a day, since you work in law enforcement and stuff, how many times a day do you get super upset and things that you have to be calm about, or that you, I don't know how to explain it. You could get mad about, but you have to stay calm because you're in that situation. How many times a day does that happen to you?
Let's see, there's 8 hours in the workday. Trying to multiply how many times it happens an hour. No, it's quite a bit. Yeah, some days are going to be good, some days are going to be bad. Especially working in the field we work with, it's not going to be a structured, scheduled, job. You could have your day planned out, hey, I'm going to work on this today, and then something's going to turn the office upside down, and that's what we have. Something happens, or something comes from the boss that's the priority, or this is the issue we need to work on. So and with me, anybody that knows me, they know I like my structure and my schedule and my plan. So with that being unorganized, that can throw you in a tizzy, and you're like, well, this is the job, this is hey Sandy, this is what we need to work on and go forward, and then, like I said, it's so easy that we don't know what anyone's day is going to be like. Like I said, I walked up to that one officer to try to help her out, and maybe she was having a bad day, and just seeing me, knowing that I was bringing something to her that needed to be fixed, it's that reaction for them could spiral your reaction and go on. And then, if my reaction to her was negative, someone comes up to me later and I snap at them, and so on and so on and so on. Right. So like I said, we always hear that, kind of be the bigger person, take a breath, take a minute. Okay. And I know one time, this is another side story. I was actually in my boss's office, and I actually had a caseload at the time. And this was a year or two ago. I had a caseload at the time. It was one of my guys. He was supposed to be coming in for what we call his intake, his very first, processing. He just got out of jail, right? So we're supposed to be getting all this stuff done on him. And he calls me every time he's supposed to show up. Oh, I got a hangnail. I stubbed my toe on the sofa, I can't come in. Oh, the car's got a flat tire. Oh, my grandma, every excuse in the book. It's like, you've got to get in here. What are you doing? And so then one day he calls me, he says, this is my geography again. He calls me and said, hey, I'm broke down on Monteagle Mountain, which, if anyone knows, Monteagle Mountain is not anywhere near us, right? in Chattanooga or Cleveland, where I am, right? What are you doing on Monteagle Mountain? Oh, well. So I said, just hang on a second, Mr. Smith, whatever he was. I can't remember. I put the phone on speaker. I put it on my boss's desk, and I just sat there. And he's like, oh, Mr. Yunker, are you still there? I said, yes, I'm waiting for my blood pressure to come down. So, he starts laughing. I was like, well, I'm going to make a joke right now. That's just kind of who I am. But you got to realize the seriousness of this, So just things like that. A lot of it's how you react can that snowball effect. Hope I
I think, yeah, I think what you also described right there was kind of a deflection, right? That was something you talked about in the conflict resolution of deflecting it, right? He was making you mad, but you deflected the situation to something that you brought it back into a humorous way to get the point across. So I think that's a common way to have resolution in conflict, especially if it's maybe somebody that's close to you, is to deflect it back to something else and get that few seconds of time and breath to stabilize yourself. Because I think a lot of times, even in the teens and the kids, like a lot of the conflict is probably with their brothers and sisters or their mom and dad or an authoritative figure that they're having to deal with. So like if they don't listen and they react without listening, generally that escalates to something worse, right?
absolutely, absolutely. Uh, One of the other things, I actually, with you saying that, typically if you have that moment, that person you snap on, or you've had enough, and that's the tipping point. You kind of go off, or you have your rant or whatever. Those are people that you typically care most about, or that you're closer with, just because you have that connection. Say that happens. Person A goes off. Person B, stop. I'm gonna let them have their minute, and then we can regroup here in a little bit. Then that conflict resolution can come up later on in step 3 when everybody's calmed back down. But like you said, it's typically around those the people that you're closer with, your family, friends, those that you care about. Which actually, to that officer from today, I went back up to her later on. So I know you always you go off on people that are closest to you, that you just really care about, man. So then bringing up that humor again, trying to relax everybody.
Yep. Katie, did you have a question? You were unmuting earlier.
I did. I was gonna ask, in a situation where you're trying to, let's say you feel wronged by something and you bring it up and you're not focusing on what the person did, but how it made you feel and how you would like to see it fixed, using the tips you mentioned, and their response is to cry and not like argue or do anything. And like, I know mine is reactions to comfort someone, but if I'm trying to get them to change their behavior and they start crying, then their behavior won't change. How would you suggest?
Right, and I've had that happen. I've had that happen several times. The good thing about us in our position, we have a lot of interactions with our clientele. We get to know them quite well. People, I make the joke, people ask what I do. I say, oh, I'm a babysitter with a gun, or I get lied to for a living. I get lied to by everybody, because like the guy from before, like, oh, my, I stubbed my toe on the sofa. I can't, like you're fibbing to me. I don't like it. But you get to know those people. Same thing with family. You get to know them. You know what their reactions are, and maybe a stressful situation like that, or a situation with that conflict. They know they've messed up, so emotions are all out of whack, right? Yes, I've had that. I've unfortunately, I don't want to say I made them cry, but there were tears shed on their end of the desk, when I was talking to them. But some of them we know could have been a tactic on their end, and we're trained essentially also to point that out and to deal with that. Sometimes they come in and like you said, just asking how their day was, and that tips them over the edge. So we have many hats, a lot of training. We have the law enforcement side of things. We have the case management side of things. We have the social worker side of things. We've got the office secretary side of things. So multiple hats that we're working and we're juggling with. So and we have to switch those, switch the hats throughout the day. throughout talking to one person, each case is different, and kind of, we, like I said, judge that and go from there.
You might have
Good.
said this earlier, Cameron. Why is conflict resolution important? If you said it earlier, just say it again for me, please.
Well, it was on my slides that I was reading from, so now I can't remember.
A great refresher to like wrap it up a little bit, right?
Why is conflict resolution important?
Mhm.
Good question.
Hang on, I'm gonna go back on your slides and look. Give me a second.
I'm trying to think what I wrote. I'm sorry. Well, as we touched on, you can have it multiple times a day. That conflict arise, whether it be someone didn't like the way you said good morning to them or whatever. But being equipped with the appropriate responses to diffuse that and move forward. We've talked about you want to have that win-win. Everybody wins essentially. The listening, things like that. I'm nothing without my slides, Sandy.
I think one other thing that I know in my what I do for a living in conflict resolution, a lot of times I have to put thoughts into my head about maybe that person just found out their son is sick or their mom is like ill, and like you don't know the past story of what that person and that emotions that person is going through. So even though that they might be emotional in the situation at hand, it could have nothing to do with that particular instance. So when you came around the corner this morning with your coworker or the officer and like she blew up at you, it could have been because the trainee had just done something dumb. She blew up at you because you were coming around and you were going to be a teaching moment for something she had done. And it was an ego thing that caused that flare up rather than her being able to be tactful to take what you were giving her and give her a positive feedback of, hey, everything looked good except for this one code that had you done it and submitted it this way, it could have caused problems. So it's kind of like when you're driving down the road and a car goes by you at 100 miles an hour. Sometimes I just think to myself, well, maybe they're going to an emergency. Like take the grace and go forward with it. So I do that a lot of time in conflict resolution, even at work, as their day is bad, but my day doesn't have to be bad because theirs is. And really deflect it back to, okay, so now let's get to the root of the problem. And a lot of times it's not the problem that you're actually dealing with, it's something else. And I'm sure you find that quite often in the probation side of things, that they're not emotional because of what's happening at the office right that second. It could have been what happened this morning when they had to make a really hard decision that they either made right or wrong, which landed them back to where they might be going the wrong direction. But so just some of that is when you guys are doing this, like think about where you are mentally, and then think about possibly where that person that you're talking to or interacting is mentally, where they've been or what they've done, to maybe be able to put yourself in their shoes for a second. And that'll help you de-escalate a lot of times. At least that's what I've found through the process, right? Is taking that deep breath, looking at it and trying to take a this isn't personal view, regardless of how personal it might feel. And then go back and be able to resolute from there.
Absolutely. And with that answer, Joe, Mr. Pricer, Dad, we're hiring. So it's very, if you're ever thinking of a career change, it sounds like you're a good fit there, kind sir.
Well, I happen to do it with a lot of people that are on the road in difficult situations. So I see it in all different walks of life, and people that have it really good and have situations where their kids are taken from them and they have to get home immediately and different things. So we see it in a lot of different paths, but I think it's just knowing that, and I did like the slide that you had in there about, 2 ears, one mouth. I do say that to myself a lot as well. when you really want to respond to something, but you know that that's not the right path because you still need to be listening to what they're saying. So if you're thinking about your response while the person's still talking, you're not listening. Like that's a really good thing to have in the back of your head. If you're trying to formulate an answer to something that person's talking about, then you've lost everything after the point that you started formulating the response, because you're not listening anymore to that particular conversation.
So in a way, it's a good thing when you win those arguments in the shower when you're alone after you've had an argument, right? Because that means you didn't think of all the good stuff when you were in the conflict. See?
Yep. Yep.
You think, oh, I could have said that. It's good because you were listening. See?
Good way to twist it, Cameron. Like it.
Do what now?
Good way to twist that. I like it.
It's a new book he's going to have coming out. Winning in the shower.
Are there any more questions? No?
There's 8 people in that cottage right there, and there was one question that came out of there.
In the cottage.
They're like, no, we don't have any.
2 questions.
2. Oh, look,
Okay.
see, you were wrong.
I must not have been actively listening, but I'm sure there's more input. All right. Well, we have 15 more minutes, but we don't have to, make it be longer.
So next week, we're going to talk about financial literacy. Basically, they're going to be 2 guys come on and talk to us. It's a book called The Latte Factor is what they're going to base it on, but it's basically how to save and prepare for your future. And I know that maybe your future seems so far away. Why worry about it now? But it's very important to think about those things now. So I hope that all or some of you come back next week, same time, to listen to it's Mr. Gary Thurman and Tide McIntosh.
This one will be fun too because these guys are radio hosts, so they get on the radio in Chattanooga every day, and they will be able to keep your attention and they'll be able to answer questions.
Radio personalities, they'll be entertaining for sure. So, all right. Thank you so much, Mr. Yunker, for being here tonight with us for this great topic. I greatly appreciate your time, and for each of you for taking time out of your evening and joining us. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.